Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Boom Comic Source collaboration. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. It's December 18th. You got a week to go before Christmas, so hope you got all your shopping done. Because I went out today. It was December 17th as we're recording this. I went out today because today's actually my wedding anniversary, and I need to go
Oh,
pick something up. And I was out there today, and it was like 1 in the afternoon. And it was packed. I was like, "Don't you people have jobs? What's going on?" It was crazy.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyway, pretty solid week, although a huge week of DC books this week and next week. Next week's Christmas. I don't know of any comic shops that are going to be open, so probably going to be Thursday before you get your books. But it's always a little frustrating for me when DC puts out this many books. Like we had a couple weeks where there was like 8 titles, and pretty easy, whatever. And we don't talk about them all in detail anymore. So, I mean, that would be like a 3-hour episode at least. But it is a little frustrating. Like, and I get that it's not always in their hand, like they're able to control it because, you have people that turn stuff in late and printer problems and distribution and all that. But man, you would hope that they do a little better job to not have them so lopsided. 8 one week, 19 the next. I think there's 14 or 15 books next week. It just makes it hard. It makes it hard because again, we're only going to talk about our top 5 in detail, so we're not talking about some books we normally would. But also, it just makes it's hard. It takes time to read that many books, first of all, and second of all, like I feel like the books lose their impact when you're reading so many. Again, it's a first world problem. I'm choosing to read all the books, even if I'm not talking about all of them in detail. But yeah, 19 books in one week, man, it's a lot. So anyway, what do you think about the week overall, Rocky?
Well, it was too many books, but this happens. I think we even had the same problem last year or a couple of years ago. It happens. I understand why it happens. It's just the nature of the beast. But I was a little disappointed this week. I was for the amount of comics I read. The vast majority of them were underwhelming to me, so it was very easy for me to pick my top 5. To be quite blunt, but maybe it was because I have to allow for maybe it was just my mood. I had a very busy week. We did a lot of house renovating, and sometimes I always underestimate sometimes the mood that I'm in when I read comics, especially when you got to read 19 of them. Not to mention the indie comics. We read quite a few indie comics this week. That will, of course, we review the indie comics on your podcast and on your YouTube channel, which we encourage everyone to go check out as well. So yeah, but again, what a wonderful problem to have. First world problem: reading comic books. Life is good, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, not only did I read all the DC books this week and all the independent books, I reread a ton of Scott Snyder stuff because Scott and I had a long conversation the other night. That's an episode that will come out on 12 Days of the Comic Source on Christmas Eve. So look forward to that, everybody. Hope you're all checking out the 12 Days of the Comic Source episodes as they're coming out with the 12 days leading up to Christmas. Chance to
Yeah.
win Global Comics code for 30 days of free Global Comics on Christmas Day. That episode will have the opportunity to win a year of Global Comics. So definitely be checking those out over on the Comic Source YouTube channel.
Yeah. I want to give a
Yeah,
shout
let's
out to you. I want to give a shout out to your Jeremy Adams interview. It was really good. It
yeah.
was great to hear Jeremy talk again. It's been a while since I saw him, so it was a great interview. Yeah, he said a lot of interesting stuff. So I encourage people to check out your Comic Source podcast. That was a great interview.
Yeah, we kicked off 12 Days of Comic Source. Jeremy and I talking about Green Lantern, everything that's been going on there, talking about Aquaman, what's to come. So yeah, definitely go and check that out, everybody. It's been getting a lot of views and downloads, so I think people are digging it. So
Right on.
all right, well, let's go ahead and kick it off. The first book, there's so many books this week. I even took notes, Raggy. And what's interesting, you said a little underwhelming, easy to pick your top 5. Kind of the same for me, and really the top 5 really overlapped quite a bit, which is surprising to me with so many books. So we'll see how it goes. Anyway, this book did not quite make my top 5, but it's The Question All Along the Watchtower, issue number 2. It's from writer Alex Segura. Cian Tormey is the artist. Romulo Fajardo Jr. on colors. Willie Schubert on letters. Great art. Renoy Montoya is a really interesting character. She's the head of security on the Justice League Watchtower. It's an interesting story. It definitely felt more kind of super heroic, a little more cosmic, and less street level in this particular issue. For me, she's not as fun of a character when that happens. Um, but being that it's only the second issue, I'm still in for sure. She's still a favorite character. Alex Segura is still a creator that I enjoy. But yeah, just losing a little bit of the street feel and how she's going to fit into a more superheroic world, we'll have to wait and see. But like I said, it wasn't on either of our top lists. So anything to add really quickly before we move on?
Uh, not really. I mean, it's a detective story. I mean, it's Raina Montoya does do an investigation. There's some good character moments between her and Batwoman. Batwoman ends up being a prime suspect in the attack against one of the challengers of the unknown. You probably want to read this. It probably doesn't hurt to read this as a backup to Challengers of the Unknown issue 1, which we'll be talking about later in this review of DC Comics this week. And so again, a decent character work, but I mean, there was a lot this week, so it just didn't make my top 5. But Segura does a good job here. And if you're interested in the absolute universe and the absolute all in, and this is a slow build. These are plot lines that are going to build over the next year or two to lead into the likely is going to be a big event to what's happening with Darkseid and what exactly is happening there. So it's probably a title that you probably wouldn't hurt picking up. Plus, if you're a Justice League fan and this new Justice League satellite, there's more little Easter eggs that you might enjoy as well in it.
Yeah, agreed. Up next is the aforementioned Challengers of the Unknown, issue number 1. It's from writer Christopher Cantwell. Art is by Sean Isaacs. Colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr. Letters by Hassan Otsman Elhau. This makes my top 5. Would have made my top 5 regardless of whether we had overlap or not. It's The Secret Life of Ace Morgan. As you mentioned, it does have a little bit of a tie-in with what's going on in the question. A lot of people might not be that familiar with Challengers of the Unknown. They're more of a, I don't want to say street level, but they're more. It's almost like action adventure, like Archaeologist or Fantastic Four, but without powers, that sort of thing. Definitely pulpy, and definitely right in the wheelhouse of Christopher Cantwell, especially because in the modern iteration of the Challengers of the Unknown, where they're taking them beyond the Silver Age kind of two-dimensional characters, because they don't have powers, you kind of lean into, I think, a little more of character work, and various writers have given them different relationship dynamics, whether they be kind of romantic or whether they be, betrayals from within or whatever. I don't want to go so far as to say a soap opera feel, but if you don't have superpowers, really it starts to really lean into the character dynamic to make a book enjoyable and to create drama and tension in the story. And that's certainly what's being hinted at here. It is a little bit of a setup issue from Christopher Cantwell, but he is an Eisner nominated writer. He's done a ton of stuff in Hollywood as well, both on the small screen and in film. So he's somebody whose work I always pay attention to, and I was really impressed with this. I'm not, the biggest Challengers of the Unknown fan, but I liked what we were getting from these characters. There are 4 or 5 of them, depending on the iteration. This time it's 5, although one of them is hurt. Again, go see the question for that. Ken is basically in the infirmary, but you've got June and Prof and Red and Rocky. They're the kind of the 4 challengers that we're used to, and they're going to be exploring kind of and trying to figure out, solve the mystery of where Darkseid went. What are the consequences of him supposedly dying? Mr. Terrific is kind of calling the shots. And that's the other part of this. This is not a dynamic that the challengers are used to. They're used to kind of being their own bosses. So having them under the purview of the Justice League, teaming up with different Justice League members. In this one, we see Ace and Superman go to Mars. It's a lot of setup, but what is being set up is very intriguing to me. And again, with Christopher Cantwell at the controls writing it, I know the character work is going to be top notch. I'm a fan of Sean Isaacs' line work. He does a fantastic job here. Especially there's like a double page spread with Mr. Terrific, and he's kind of laying out the mission, and it's almost like, you can see it if you're watching us on YouTube, it's almost like the mission statement for the series in a lot of ways. So I'm expecting this to have a lot of twists and turns with Cantwell writing it, and to have some great character work. So I'm really excited for this. Again, a bit of a setup issue, but what that allows Christopher to do is, if you're not that familiar with the Challenges of the Unknown, you don't need to go back and read anything. He gives you what you need, and a sense of who they are and a sense of each of the individual characters in this issue. So I thought it was a great start, a really, really good way to do a first issue. And it feels like we're just at the beginning of what's going to be a fantastic story. So I know it was on your honorable mention list, Rocky. So anything to add?
Yeah, I want to add that one of Christopher Cantwell did something that I thought was very important, and had he not done it, I wouldn't even be on my list at all. And that is that he. It has to be asked. You've got the Justice League. What on earth do you need for? What do you need the Challenges of the Unknown for? They're for humans. They're a liability. You're a superhero. Why would Superman bring a human with him checking out Mars? Bear in mind that Mr. Terrific has found 4 reverberations of the death of Darkseid at different parts of the universe, and the challenges are there to go and check out. And the question has to be asked, why? I don't care if they're challenges of the unknown. They're still ordinary human beings. They're a liability. I don't care. They can. What does that even mean? And I'm aware of the history of the challenges of the unknown, but in this new DC universe, why are they so important? And that's answered here, and it's very significant. And it's Mr. Terrific is holding a secret, and that secret is these challenges of the unknown, that these anomalies, universal anomalies that have arisen at various parts in the universe, these anomalies have in some way manifested in the challenges of the unknown themselves. So they're important for that reason. And I like that because it elevates them. They're more than just human beings caught and helping in an extraordinary circumstance, helping out the Justice League. They are themselves significant to the story moving forward, and that's what I like. And I also like, crazy as it sounds, I like the purple costumes. Crazily enough, I thought I like that, and I really like cover A. It's really well done.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I said it's 4, sometimes 5. It's actually 5, sometimes 6. So,
Yeah.
because I forgot. On that one page with the 4 of them, yeah, Ace is not pictured, but he's always been a kind of a founding member as well. So again, Challenge of the Unknown, not the most well known property, I guess you'd say, but yeah, and there are some. You're right. There are some fantastic covers rather. Fika Osio does he has a Virgin variant of June that has a foil version as well. That's really cool. So, all right. Up next, we have Batman Superman World's Finest. This is written by Mark Waid. Fran Gowan handles the art and the colors. Steve Wan's on letters. Again, it didn't make either of our top list. What it has going for it's a one and done story. The Fran Galan art, it reminded me a lot of Dan Brereton. So if anybody remembers that Elseworlds Thrill Killer story, that's what this reminded me of. It did have some humor with Jimmy Olsen taking his elastic formula. Crypto shows up. He teams up with Ace the Bat Hound. It is fun, but ultimately it wasn't really memorable, which is why it didn't make my list. But it does have that timeless feel that Mark Waid has been giving to World's Finest. So, all right. Up next, another book that didn't make our top 5, Batman 89 Echoes. This thing is so late. I think it's like 3 months late. It's written by Sam Hamm. Joe Quinones and Stacey Lee handle pencils. Paolo Rivera and Joe Quinones on inks. Leonardo Ito on colors. Carlos and Mangual on letters. And I got to be honest, this thing has become so late that I just don't care anymore. And what's amazing to me is it's so late, and yet it still feels rushed and choppy. Like it jumps around in this issue so much, like they're trying to cram everything in. I was like, are they trying to finish it in this issue? I don't know how they do that. Well, they don't, but it's like jam packed and it jumps around. I don't. Even though I kind of remembered what was happening, I went back and I flipped through some previous issues. They're just you can't have a book this late. Like I can't imagine the sales on this are going to be any good at all. Most people are just going to wait for the trade at this point because, yeah, it's like 3 months late. So, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but you killed what could have been a good story. It had potential, and you just killed it. So, anyway, up next we have Batman Santa Claus Silent Night Returns, issue number 4. My notes on this say, man, a lot of humor, and it's beginning to feel a lot like Christmas, which I guess, it's December 17th, December 18th, whatever. My number one complaint about this series so far had been that it didn't have that holiday feel. we're definitely getting that with Mrs. Claus showing up here, and there's just some real humor here. Robot Man gets an axe. Santa gives him like a barbarian axe because that's what he asked for when he was a kid. He actually meant a guitar when he was asking for an axe when he was a kid. There's a great scene where the demon attacks like this giant monster and is literally inside snacking, and everybody's grossed out by it. That's really funny. Metamorpho turns into helium and infects a monster, goes into a monster's lungs, and when the monster yells for help, he has like a high voice and nobody can hear him. It's just really fun. The fun and the holiday feel is back with this issue, and it probably would have made my top 5 had there not been so many books this week. So written by Jeff Parker, Lucas Kettner, and Michelle Bandini on art, colors by Marcelo Maiello, and letters by Pat Broso. So yeah, it is, in my mind, it's heading in the right direction. So check it out if you so desire. This next one didn't make my top 5, but as honorable mention, it's Batman and Robin Year One, issue number 3, co-plot by Mark Waid and Chris Samnee, written by Waid, art by Samnee, colors by Mateus Lopez, letters by Clayton Cowles with Chris Samnee. Continues to be a fun story, really leaning into friction between Batman and Robin as they're trying to feel each other out, which has never been done before. But I've mentioned this, Chris Samnee dream project, like a bucket list project for him, and he's the one that brought it to Waid. Wade's like, oh yeah, teaming back up with you for sure. Let's do it. But then, when I talked to Waid about it at San Diego Comic-Con, the first thing he said was, yeah, everybody tells a story about how like just they seamlessly teamed up and became this great duo. And Chris wants to take it a little bit of a different direction. So we're seeing the friction, which is really funny and injects some humor in the story because we're getting a Dick Grayson that's not the kind of the perfect adopted son that we've seen before. At one point in this issue, Alfred calls him a tornado in sweatpants. He won't pick up after himself. All he wants to do is like play video games, watch cartoons, and eat cereal. Bruce is having a hard time understanding him and relating to him. And when Alfred finally brings this to Bruce's attention, and Bruce mentions that, I thought because we went through similar trauma and I didn't act like this, that he would be responsible right away. And Alfred says, well, Master Bruce, that's because you were born and you were 25 years old. That's how old you were when you were born. Yeah. Basically saying he's like really like mature, even from the womb, which I thought was funny as well. So yeah, another one that definitely would have made my top 5, if not for such a crowded, so many books this week. Now this next one does make my top 5.
Well, just a minute. I just want to make some comments on this one.
Okay.
Batman and Robin Year One. What I particularly liked about it was that I liked Mark Waid's scripting of Dick Grayson, and just how Batman himself was not really aware. It was really Alfred basically trying to get Bruce Wayne's attention, Batman's attention, while Batman's focusing on other things. Alfred's trying to get his attention to say, you got to focus on Dick. And because in many ways, Bruce is just focused on being Batman, and Robin is the sidekick. And so it's a learning. You really get a sense of the early years and the learning experience of Bruce Wayne as Batman as well. I thought that was well played. And I really like how Dick Grayson was manipulated, and the way that he didn't have the experience to know that Two-Face was sort of playing him and manipulating him. And the way that the plot was, the plot played out, I thought was very well done. And so this was almost on my list too. And I love the Chris Samnee art. So, but it was a contender for at least an honorable mention on my end.
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. But again, it's such a crowded, week. And just to go back real fast, we were talking about covers. I forgot when we were talking about World's Finest. I wanted to shout out the David Nakayama Zatanna cover for World's Finest. It's like an almost all white cover because she's wearing like a white suit and the background's white. Obviously, she's got her fishnets on and she's got her long dark hair and whatever. But man, it's just a gorgeous cover. So I wanted to shout that out. So. Anyway, moving on. Next book that is in my top 10, Action Comics number 1080, penultimate chapter of Phantoms, written by Mark Waid. Clayton Henry is the artist, colors by Matt Herms, letters by Dave Sharp. The art is fantastic. Last issue we got no Clayton Henry art. and it was, we both kind of commented on it that we kind of missed him, but kind of as I guess a consolation, we get all Clayton Henry art in this particular issue where he's not having and it's because the way they were dividing up before was I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the other artist that that did the work.
I can't remember either.
Michael Shelfer. So
Okay.
Michael Shelfer had been doing the Keenan Kong parts of the story, and Connor Kent parts of the story, and then last issue he did the whole thing. There's not really, I mean, there is Keenan and Connor here, but it's not the same way when, Clayton was focused on the Superman part in the Phantom Zone, and then Michael Shelfer was doing the parts that were in the regular dimension. So fantastic that we get all of Clayton in this particular issue, because we get a bunch of different battles. We had a lot of action last time with battles on Earth. This time we're getting battles in space, right? Like we saw at the end of last issue, or we were told at the end of last issue, that some of the Phantom Zone prisoners that had escaped had gone out into the galaxy. And now it's up to the Superman family to go out there and still capture them. So we're getting various battles. So with Clayton Henry art. So even though we didn't get it last issue and we kind of missed it, at least we're getting it this issue, and it's really fantastic. Really, really enjoying that. We also see Supergirl go and talk to the ruling council of Kandor. We've seen some sort of political aspects of the book where the ruling council of Kandor wants to have a say in how the Phantom Zone is used and how the prisoners there are treated or whatever. And the fact of the matter is, I got to say that I think the ruling council of Kandor are a bunch of idiots. They just are. Like,
Yeah.
Superman would, he would never do this because he's Superman. But in a way, it's like you owe your existence to him. And it's kind of like why you don't like talk bad to your server in a restaurant or a bartender who's making your drinks, right? Like they could like spike your food. You know what I mean? Why would you do that? Now Superman's never going to take it out on them, but it's like you guys live in this tiny bottled city, and in a way you're sort of existing at, by the grace of Superman. Like he could just be like, you know what, I'm done with you guys. Take care of yourselves. Go do whatever. And again, I know he's not going to do that but it's just, where's the gratitude? Where's the like you're making, and that's beyond the fact that you're just making stupid decisions. You're just making bad choices because you have something against the House of L or whatever. Like, I don't know. It's the one part that doesn't make as much sense. Like typically Mark Waid is pretty good at retconning stuff, but it's like with this, this new leader, that's supposedly the leader that the descendant of the leader, daughter of the leader that Clark's parents had an issue with, particularly his father, Jor-El. It would have always been an issue, right? But it's never been an issue till now. It's the one thing that doesn't quite fit with continuity or whatever, but I'm willing to give it a pass because for the most part, this is really interesting. But man, she's supposed to be an unlikable character, and Wade's doing a fantastic job because she is intensely dislikable. And yeah, she's just an idiot. The last thing that I'll mention about it is Mon-El, and what's going to happen to him seems to be like it's going to be pretty important. You can tell about that there's the anger under the surface there. He almost says the quiet part out loud here when he says, I should have been the older, I should have been the hero, whatever. There's a little bit of resentment, it feels like there, which sets up an interesting dynamic. And I can't help but wonder if we might not be getting a return of the Legion of Superheroes, but a more classic Legion of Superheroes, not like the Bendis stuff that we got. Because Mark Waid has written Legion of Superheroes before. He had a really amazing run. Barry Kitson did a lot of the art on that back in the early 2000s, and I wouldn't be surprised if maybe that's on the horizon for Waid. He's definitely a writer that can handle 3 books a month. Doing World's Finest, especially if World's Finest is sort of one and done type stories, and then a Legion book. I don't know. He's also doing Justice League Unlimited. Ooh, 4 books. I might be pushing it. But anyway, yeah, love the stuff that's going on with Mon-El. We'll see how that plays out. He's one of my favorite Legionnaires. And yeah, the art. What more can I say about the art of Clayton Henry? He's so fantastic. His art is just amazing. And it's teased that the final issue here is going to be an epic battle We'll see if anything with the Kandor political machinations matter. But at the end of the day, Superman just wants to take down Zadu. Um, and I imagine we'll see some sort of final disposition for the Phantom Zone as well. Because even though all the Phantom Zone prisoners managed to destroy all the Phantom Zone projectors that were on Earth, they did manage to Mr. Terrific, with the help of Mr. Terrific, they managed to create some like one-time use ones. So it'll be interesting to see. Like, are we back to like the traditional Phantom Zone? It seems like we are, where nothing's solid and everybody is a Phantom. That's kind of the Phantom Zone I prefer. So yeah, one issue left, and we'll have to wait and see how everything plays out. And then as far as the backup goes, Mariko Tamaki is the writer. Skylar Patridge is the artist. Colors by Marisa Louise. Letters by Becca Carey. Again, I'm just ready for. I'm not going to say much. I'm ready for it to be over. It's had its moments, but for the most part, it's been extremely underwhelming, and it just feels like it's dragged on way too long. I have enjoyed the art throughout, though. I will say that Skylar Patridge's art in it has been fantastic. But anything to add about Action Comics, Rocky?
I really love seeing all the different Phantom Zone criminals. That's really cool. I hope that there's more sophistication in terms of the subplot regarding Kandor. I think that building up the politics and the dissension and a growing rift between the Kandorian Council and Superman, for whatever reason, I think that's a good idea. There's lots of potential that can be explored there. I think I like that idea, and I love your idea with the Legion of Superheroes. Mark Waid has already been responsible for one attempt at revamping the Legion of Superheroes that didn't quite stick. But I would love for him to take another class at another shot at a classic Legion of Superheroes. I think that would be a great idea. The Supergirl backup has been a consistent miss for me. A villain that is completely underwhelming and just a massive disappointment. And it was the reason why I never bought the physical copies of this Action Comics, because it just added unnecessarily to the plot point. Very significant miss for me on the backup, from the beginning right through to the end here. Just very underwhelming. And but in any event, I'm loving Superman. I love the Phantom Zone criminals, and I think I might, maybe I'll pick up the trade in that when it's collected in its inevitable trade, because it would probably be pretty cool to read all as in one story as well.
Yeah, I mean, if Waid takes over or brings back Legion of Superheroes, I wonder if we might not get John Kent Saturn Girl like you've been hoping for a long time. I know that John Kent is in a relationship with Jay Nakamura, but I also know some things that are coming regarding that. So I'm not saying that he's not going to be with Jay, but even if he stays with Jay, like, so he's with Jay here, but then when he goes to the future, it could be like he's torn between the two because he feels attracted to Saturn Girl, but he has this relationship with Jay, like that. That introduces drama or what have you. So yeah, we'll see. But I don't think I told you what I know about, or what I've been. I don't know a lot, but anyway, remind me, Rocky. I'll tell you later.
I will.
All right. Up next, we have Catwoman. God, I can't believe this book is up to issue number 71. I really cannot believe it's up to issue number 71. But anyway, this is part 1, new arc, Rules of the Land, continuing to be written by Torrin Grunbeck, Mariana Ignazi on art, Patricio Del Pesce on colors, Steve Wands on letters. Not on my top 5, actually. This is really low on my list. What my notes say, meh. Art, meh. Equals meh. Like, I didn't I thought the colors looked washed out. For all that I've enjoyed the kind of spy aspect of it, this felt like setup to me, and it didn't really advance it. But one of the things I did want to mention, being that we had 2 issues from Torn already, but now we're starting a new arc, and we get the final issue of the first arc of Absolute Batman this week, which we'll talk about in a little while, and that's number 3. It's like, all of a sudden we're getting arcs that don't last 6 issues. We're getting a 2-part story, and then I guess probably a 3 or a 4-part story. So you'll end up being like 2 arcs in a trade, I guess, which is fine. But I kind of like that. I like that it's not this rigid. Everything is 5 or 6 issues. Everything is 5 or 6 issues. You got to read 5 or 6 issues to get a complete story, because it wasn't that way, as you know, when we were growing up, Rocky. Sometimes it was one and done. Sometimes, it was cool when they started doing it, like 10 Nights of the Beast. Oh, it's a 4-part story. It was like trade dress on the cover, because it was the exception rather than the rule. and that has completely been flipped on its head. And you know, people say they blame Bendis for that with Ultimate Spider-Man or what have you. And it's kind of like a chicken egg thing first, which came first, writing for the trade, or trades started to sell, so then people started writing for them, or trades came about because people were writing 5-6 issue arcs. Who knows? But yeah, for me, this was a little bit underwhelming, but I'm still in for sure because I think Torun Grumbeck's doing a great job, and I like where Catwoman is here. I don't miss her being in Gotham. I have no sense that we're going to go back to Gotham anytime soon or deal with the whole Selena Bruce relationship, which everybody who listens to this for a long time knows that I don't put those two together. But yeah, this was a little bit disappointing, but overall, I'm still excited for Catwoman. But you had it on your honorable mention list, so what are your thoughts on it?
Well, yeah, I actually have. Yeah, I'm actually enjoying a series on. I think it's Amazon. It's Michael Fassbender in The Agency, and this actually reminds me a little bit of that. I really enjoyed. I actually agree with some of the criticism of the art, to be honest. But the story pulls me in because I actually like what Torun Grumbeck has done here. This is telling an interesting sort of twist on Catwoman's past, where Catwoman was another identity, and she literally had a different identity, and the other thieves that she worked with didn't know that she was really Selena Kyle. So I like that. And it sort of sets Selena Kyle up as almost like in her own. She's a little miniature espionage unit all into herself, and her old identity, her old crew was one member of her old crew was killed, and that sort of led her to Berlin to explore to investigate the murder. And one of her old crewmates, this Ivan character, has become more of a kind of a ruthless mafioso, and he used to be her partner back in the day, and he only knows her as Evie. He doesn't even know she's Catwoman, and that's what's so intriguing about it and so interesting. And so here, but he's Ivan is trying to wipe out all the former members of his crew, and he has no idea that Evie's actually Catwoman, and that's what I like the setup here, and this. And this entire issue is just Selena setting up, going back to Berlin, being followed, knowing she's being followed, always being one step ahead of the people following her, and done in a very clever way. I feel that this is a combination, a little bit of the Agency show that I'm watching, a little bit of Bourne Identity, a little bit of James Bond, and I like it. And even though the art isn't I wouldn't say it's excellent. It does enough to convey that tone and that mood for me that it really pulled me in, and I like it so. I think there's an energy to this story that I'm really getting behind, and I'm invested in the story because I'm actually curious about this. Is actually an interesting angle for Selena Kyle and what her past could be. I kind of like the idea that Selena Kyle was more than just somebody who was going around the world learning how to be a good thief. She actually had multiple different identities. She had multiple different. I kind of like that idea to explore that angle of it in a way that, I mean, we've seen it done so many times with Batman about, as Bruce Wayne, he for 10 years he went around the world and he trained, et cetera, et cetera. I like these little hints of Selena Kyle's past, I like it feels fresh to me, even though it's not exactly a new way to approach the character. It works for me in a way that I think it feels fresh, and maybe it's just because it's coming off a run that I wasn't a huge fan of that I find it very refreshing. But it definitely gets an honorable mention from me this week.
All right, sounds good. Up next, we have Plastic Man No More, issue number 4. Christopher Cantwell. We just talked about his Challenge of the Unknown. He's writing the final. He's written the whole series for Plastic Man. His final issue here. Alex Linz is the artist. Jacob Edgar gives an art assist for a few of the pages. Marcelo Maiello on colors, and then Becca Carey on letters. This is in your top 5, Rocky. It wouldn't actually not have made mine, but I think it's fantastic. And it's just, this is another one that only doesn't make my top 5 because there's so many books this week. But give us your thoughts on it.
It's funny. Normally, I wasn't. I thought the first issue was intriguing. I wasn't a big fan of the second and third issue, and honestly, there's been some. I think that writer Christopher Cantwell, my criticism of it was that I think he unnecessarily changed some of the Plastic Man's relationship with the Justice League. There were some relationships and character choices he made that I thought were unnecessary. But he sort of, this fourth issue, he sort of pulled all of it back. And the emotional grounding in this issue and the character work in this final issue, basically, I thought was so good that I actually, it made me forget about those minor little character irritations of the first three issues. Because I just really liked how it established his relationship with his son. And the fact, I mean, this is Plastic Man. This has horror-like elements. He's disintegrating. The molecular bonding, his molecules are unbonding from themselves. And the only way that he can save himself, and he believes ultimately save his son from the same fate, is to basically contain himself contain a nuclear explosion. And even that plot line kind of irritated me. It's like, oh please, as if Plastic Man's gonna go that crazy, he's gonna put himself in the middle of a nuclear explosion, and he's killed some characters, like, and it was just, so there was all these things it was hard for me to buy into, but for some reason this issue pulled me back in, and I could see the tragedy of this in a way that the whole point of this issue was that the whole point of this story, and the reason why I guess it is out of continuity and it is Black Label, is that this is a Plastic Man that did cross some lines, and he did it for love. He was a criminal, but he didn't want his son to have the same fate. He didn't have a good relationship with his son. All those little choices that he made during his life have come back to haunt him, his fate. And now he's trying to make it all right again by doing something extraordinarily horrific in a vain attempt to save his life, and what may or may not await his son's own fate, because his son might ultimately die of the same thing. It's grounded in really great character work. One of the characters, a black lab assistant, basically in the story, also has some tragedy in her own past, having she got drunk and she lost her own daughter in a drunk driving accident. So she herself has got some own. She's on a sort of a request for redemption there as well. Robin shows up here. Great work of Robin, and I think it's Dick Grayson Robin. He tries to stop Plastic Man unsuccessfully, but at the end, Plastic Man decides to tell his son to go away. He ends up the nuclear explosion happens, but not before he tells his son to go away and apologize to his son. And he realized that he crossed the line, and he just wants his son to go back, and he essentially asks for forgiveness, tells his son that he loves him, and there's a tragedy there. There's a moment where the art is so horrific yet fantastic yet touching. Here's a melting face of Plastic Man in a plate, and he's talking to his son, telling his son to go save yourself from me, and he's feeling so guilty and guilt-ridden and everything else, and ultimately his son does escape. And there's a moment at the end where the Justice League is talking about Plastic Man, and even Robin got pissed off listening to the Justice League, and I did too, because the Justice League, they're saying, oh my God, I guess Plastic Man, I guess he did something wrong. He's implicated in these murders and in these deaths, and they're talking about it so matter of fact, and then they're saying things like, oh, but he was a funny guy, but he was, and it just sort of reinforced all that previous characterization that annoyed me. It actually made me understand that the payoff was in this final issue, where this is how the Justice League, there was sort of a little bit of a contest. There was an elitism to the members of the Justice League with Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and they did sort of look down on Plastic Man and Bibbo and what have you. And even Robin sees it, and Robin shows some resentment and even leaves the meeting. And even Plastic Man's son is asked to join the League, and he doesn't want to, and he defends his father, and he leaves. And I thought it really worked well, and I found myself frustrated with the League and cheering for Plastic Man, even though he was no longer there. And he does survive, and this as a series that can continue on to another day. But I thought the character work was well done here, and I admit that it took me to this final issue to bring it all home. because I had to get over my preconceptions of mainstream Plastic Man, but this worked and it worked very well. And the art is just absolutely fantastic because that artist Alex Lins did a fantastic job reinforcing that horror element throughout as Plastic Man goes through his emotional journey that ultimately leads to him making a sacrifice, but at least in the end achieving a kind of redemption that is finally brought home through an act that his son makes before his son gives his mother a final gift from his father. And I thought it was very well done. So yes, I recommend it for me.
Yeah, definitely great character work. It's what I expected from Christopher Cantwell. Definitely tragic as well, which I also have come to expect from Christopher. And you're right about the art; perfectly suits the story. Um, and you're the way I kind of justified it. Yeah, it's Black Label, so it's okay that it's not the same sort of decisions or motivations or actions that the Plastic Man we all know would take, but it does seem a little bit out of character, these choices that he makes. But if you read the whole series, it's kind of like he felt forced into doing them, and then because of the estrangement with his son, and what we wouldn't do for our kids. So I kind of can see why he would make the choices that he made, even if some of them seem wrong. But then at the end, he's just filled with regret, and he even can't go through with it. So yeah, the whole story in a way is very tragic. Anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have a book that's my top five. Nightwing, 120, Waters. Dexter plays the artist, Veronica on colors, on others. I've talked a lot about it before. I'll say it again. Waters don't, and he's to write weird stories. This is by far the most traditional superheroic work that he's ever done. There's still a little bit of weirdness there, if you will. It's been just a fantastic job. Kind of tradition, story. He's also pulling in rightly and smartly, very intelligent. Pull in a lot of things that Taylor had in his run. Love run, an Eisner winning run. Why wouldn't you, continue with Bloodhaven, Grayson having the people need to love? His sensibilities a little bit more of a crime noir feel to it, with these different things that are going up against each other, and being, trying to make the best of a bad situation. That power vacuum and was no longer there. And in fact, in this issue, we see Grayson go and meet with Olivia Pierce, the head of Spirit Solutions, who is has her own sort of machinations as armed the police department, military, and it really is. What I love Waters is doing is he's having Dick Grayson work both as Dick Grayson to solve the problem and as Nightwing to solve the problem. At the end of the day, it's not a problem to solve, right? And when Nightwing knows, he thinks he knows what's going on with the Teddy, is one of the gangs that is trying to fill that power vacuum in a way, and some that got hurt. Some members of the gang that got hurt by the Bloodhaven Police Department last issue, and he goes to kind of take the teddy bears out, assuming that, hey, they're bad people. They recruited these kids, and now the kids are dead or injured or what have you, and they find out it's not necessarily the case. Yeah, they steal cars, that's kind of their shtick, but they do it because they don't really have any other way to feed themselves. They're doing it out of a need for survival, and things aren't quite as black and white as Dick Grayson would maybe want them to be. It's not an easy decision, or easy to draw the lines on who's the good guy and who's the bad guy. That's fantastic work from Dan Waters, and it really shows that Dick Grayson this is a tougher problem for him to solve than maybe he might have first realized. So I think it's fantastic work. I think the Dexter Soy art is great. There are times, Dexter Soy, he doesn't have the cleanest style, and there's times when it gets a little too kind of scritchy for my taste, where a little too textured, where it feels a little bit messy. But he's right up to that. but keeping his style clean enough here that it's this is the kind of Dexter Soy art that I really enjoy. So I thought this was fantastic. I thought the color work was done really well. Um, I, a few issues in, and I might be in the minority here, but a few issues in, I may like this as much, if not more, than the Tom Taylor Nightwing run. Which you got to give Taylor a lot of credit for setting it up, because Nightwing wouldn't be where he's at in terms of Bloodhaven, Pennyworth Foundation, all that. But it's going to be interesting to see when Waters' run is done, and there's no reason to do this. I'm not saying everybody needs to do it, but I have a tendency to do it where I'll take a person's run and I'll compare it to the previous run or other runs from the past and say, which one do I like better? And like a lot of people love the Scott Snyder run of Batman and dislike the Tom King run of Batman. They're so different, but I remember those first couple issues of the Tom King Batman run, liking it better than the first few issues of the Scott Snyder run. But I don't really compare them these days because they're too different. And that might be the case with Nightwing. I don't know. But yeah, really interesting what Dan Waters is doing. I'm very impressed with what he's doing on Nightwing. So anything to add, Rocky?
Yeah, I like the kinetic energy of the Dexter Soy's art, and it feels like that the plot's moves faster than a Tom Taylor story. And Tom Taylor had his high points. His strength was character work, but less so on the plotting. Dan Waters seems a little bit more on the go in terms of the plot. It seems to be moving faster, and plus at the same time we're also getting character work, and Dan Waters does understand the relationship between Barbara Gordon and Dick Grayson, and I kind of like the fact that this isn't some huge love fest for Dick Grayson. I know Tom Taylor had a love fest for Dick Grayson, and I love that too. That was interesting, and that Tom Taylor's run will always be beloved. But I like the fact that we're a little bit more, we're hitting the ground running here. There's action packed. This is a little bit more visceral and real, and this is going to be this is harder edged, and it's more suitable to Dan Waters' taste, and that's reflected in Dexter Soy's art. And it's interesting the way that you described his art with the line work and everything else. I think it works here, and I like it that it sets it apart from Gotham. This feels differently. It's got a unique feel to it. Dexter Soy's he's artistically defining his place in this series in Bloodhaven, and I think it works so far. And as long as the plotting continues to be this good, I think Nightwing's in pretty good hands.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, up next we have the finale of Dark Knights of Steel, Allwinter. This is issue number 6, The Day the World Went Away. Jay Kristoff is the writer, Tirso on art, Wes Abbott on letters. And I just got to shout out, no matter what cover you get on this one, man, you're getting a great cover. There's a Bjorn's Barons cover that's fantastic. And then there's, I think it's Iyari Grown cover that's also really awesome. So yeah, no matter which cover and then obviously the main cover by Tirso is great with the close-up of Mr. Freeze. But yeah, they're all the covers on this one are awesome. But anyway, give us your thoughts on the final issue here. This is in your top.
Yeah, it is. First, let me apologize to the people watching on YouTube. I don't have that. I didn't download all the covers. I can only show you cover A, which is pretty damn cool, which shows the I guess the Mr. Freeze like character on in the Dark Knights of Steel iteration. But I thought this finale for me absolutely nailed the landing in a way that actually surprised me, but I thought it was deeply satisfying. Everything sort of came to fruition here, and it was done in such a way. This was this was a happy ending. This is like a really dark, brooding fairy tale, and it has a happy ending, and it has a happier ending than I thought. And I know it's because one of the central conceits of this series that you and I talked about, and that we even missed when we sort of reviewed the very first issue, was the fact that it was in black and white, and we're maybe somewhat critical of that, but the color plays a role. I mean, and color plays a role in it because this it's called Allwinter because it's a black and white area, and the reason why it's all white is because there was an assassination attempt. Deathstroke had was hired to assassinate the king, but ended up killing I guess Mr. Freeze's, who is a mage, a magician, a mage's wife, Nora, and sort of Mr. Freeze then he sort of cursed the land, and it became all dark and gloomy and hence the Allwinter, and in the quest to try to in the quest to confront Mr. Freeze, there's many an adventure, and basically Deathstroke encounters his daughter Rose. There's battles in the earlier issues. He ends up meeting Bruce Wayne, the Batman, the Knight, and ultimately he makes his, and all he has the son who is the his son's name. It's a Joseph. It's his wife Adeline. I thought Adeline was killed, but she wasn't. She's actually alive. And then his young son, who what's his son's name? It's not Joseph. In any event, it's unimportant. That the son is the one that he's colored in green and yellow. He's got the blonde hair. He's with them on the quest, and ultimately they make it to the end, along with Rose, and they're battling Mr. Freeze, and he utilizes his power. He knows what he has to do because the young son was given a message from the Green, and he utilizes that. He frees Nora. She's freed from being frozen, and the land becomes all green again. I mean, this is this ended like a fairy tale, and yet it was grin and gritty. And Slade Wilson, the Deathstroke, gets a happy ending. He gets his family. He gets Adeline. He gets Adeline back, his wife. He gets his two other boys that he thought were lost and became frozen zombies, and they're healed. All the people in the land are healed. They're no longer zombies. This is a happy ending all around. And even Bruce Wayne returns, the Batman, or the Knight, because he has a strong sense of honor, and he met up with Adeline, and he returns to the land to help his friend who saved his life, Deathstroke, in the earlier issues. And by the way, this is only 6 issues. This was a hell of a good story for 6 issues long. Very well done. Highly recommended. I wish this was a trade for Christmas. I'd get it for someone. This was very, very well done. Very good setup. These are the types of stories that this is how you handle an Elseworlds universe. When you have the Dark Knights of Steel, and this is in one area of this Dark Knights of Steel world, the Allwinter, if we could get vignettes like this of stories in various parts of this world, I would love that. We didn't. There's no backup in this issue. Like we got the origin of Aquaman in the first 5 issues as a backup. But this was really well done. Art's fantastic. The color work's great and very, very deliberate and specific. Very well done, and I thought it was excellent. And quite frankly, anybody, especially if you're a fan of Deathstroke, this is an absolute must, because this is the core of who Deathstroke is. It just happens to be in a completely different, more medieval-like iteration of it, in a Game of Thrones type of setting, with all the mysticism and color and lack thereof that you could want. Very well done, and definitely a high recommend. And it's it's in contention for pick of the week for me. Any comments on it?
Yeah, unfortunately, it was probably my least favorite of the entire series. I mean, the first one, I had some problems with that because I was like, I don't know why it's black and white, and then and if it is going to be black and white, like give me black and white. Why cover everything up with ink wash? And then the second issue, we find out no, it's not actually black and white. It's the Allwinter. What's happened in the story, in story reason, and that gave me a different perspective on issue 1. It wasn't that it was a bad story. It felt like it wrapped up a little too conveniently here. And so I don't know, but the character work, in this final issue is really good. I do want to make one thing clear though. Alec is not Deathstroke's son. Maybe an adopted son or what have you, but I think it was mentioned earlier, like it's Alec Holland.
That's right. Thank you.
Is who this is. So if you're like, well, why does that sound familiar? Like Alec Holland was the original Swamp Thing. So, you take it from that context. It's like, kind of looking at the brilliance of the story that they were able to do here was the fact that you're taking the Alec Holland, who is in a different way than Swamp Thing and Avatar of the Green, right? And this idea that yes, at times things can go dormant, when you have a winter, particularly harsh winter or what have you, but that life is going to, spring again from the kind of cold depths of winter or what have you. So I think Jay Kristoff does a really good job of that. And then obviously the brilliance of, hey, everything's in black and white, except when you have the literal green, right? The power of the green that Alec Holland here is channeling that kind of breaks through everything. And then it's bright and vibrant, and the whole idea of spring renewed and what have you. So yeah, it ends up being a really brilliant story. I don't know, maybe I needed another issue or two to have it end a little bit of a different way. Cause it's like, man, this version of Victor Freeze was built up, and it was such a long journey to get there. And then they defeat him in one issue. I don't know. It felt a little bit anticlimactic to me, still really good. And the Tirso art is just next level. The color work and everything was fantastic. Yeah, I mean, it ends up being a pretty good story. Interesting version of Slade Wilson for sure. Interesting version of Alec Holland, and then you mentioned the backup. Yeah, I'm really excited to see the Dark Knights of Steel version of Aquaman. So we'll see how that plays out. All right, up next we have Green Arrow, Green Lantern, World's Finest Special #1. 2 stories in here. First one written by Jeremy Adams. Lucas Meyer handles the art. Marcelo Maiello on colors. Lucas Catoni on letters. And then there's and that's basically Hal Jordan and Green Arrow teaming up. So a little bit of hard traveling hero reunion in a way. And then we've got Green Lantern and the Flash, Barry Allen version of the Flash. In the second story, Jeremy Adams also writing that story. Travis Mercer handles the art in the second story. Andrew Dahlhaus on colors. Lucas Catoni on letters. And I think even on the cover, it even says New Tales from a Hard Traveling Era. So these are stories that are set back in time. They're not in current continuity, but this is on your top 5, Rocky. So give us your thoughts.
Well, it's one of the things I'm going to give a shout out to your interview with Jeremy Adams. One of the things that Jeremy Adams stated in that interview that really I think pays dividends here is that he talked about, for him, he's always it's important to Jeremy Adams that he gets it right, that he knows the history, and he likes planting those Easter eggs. And that he likes to put that in when he can, and he wants to know those little tidbits, and he thinks it's important. And this is why he's a guy's guy. This is why he's following the path, I think, like of Jeff Johns, or whether that's by design or not. That's what it feels like. But it's also in his passion and what he wants, and the fact that he wrote these 2 stories, first with Living Free with Green Lantern and Green Arrow with Lucas Meyer as the artist, and then one with the Flash. It's a callback. It's a callback. And what's fantastic is that this is a story that takes place. It's basically Deathstroke's first appearance that you didn't know was his first appearance. This takes place before Deathstroke's first appearance in Teen Titans issue #2 in the Wolfman Perez era. And Deathstroke is hired to basically kill Green Lantern and Green Arrow. Of course, he's unsuccessful, and that's in the Living Free story. And then he fails, and then he tries to he once again tries to take out the Flash, and ultimately Green Lantern, after surviving an assassination attempt from Deathstroke, meeting Deathstroke for the first time in the Green Lantern Green Arrow story, that flows into the Flash story, and it ultimately. It's really Deathstroke's first appearance. So this is Jeremy Adams giving us a real cool Easter egg of, by the way, you want to know how Deathstroke ended up where he was when we first met him in Teen Titans issue 2? This is that story. And it's a fantastic story. And Jeremy Adams nails the character of Hal Jordan and Oliver Queen. And does that really surprise us? No. Is it surprising that he nails the character of the Flash? Of course not. Of Barry Allen? No. This is a really good story. And it's the Hive that ultimately was hiring Deathstroke to do this. But why was the Hive doing that? Deathstroke himself is being used, and he knows he's being used. And so... But all this plays out in the story, because at first you think, oh, this is just Deathstroke being hired to take out a couple of Justice Leaguers. There's more to it than that. There's more nuance to that, and that's because it's Jeremy Adams, and he's got a goal here, and he's trying to set up and say, oh, by the way, you thought you knew this story prior to the first appearance of Deathstroke. Here's a little bit of extra for you, for those of you who love your Teen Titans and you love your Deathstroke. And just does a fantastic job. And of course, full compliments to Lucas Meyer. It's just fantastic. I mean, with this younger Deathstroke early in his career, still having a spotless record, never been unsuccessful in a kill, but his first time being unsuccessful and taking out Green Lantern and Green Arrow. Subsequently, same failure with the Flash. Very well done. And a shout out, of course, to the artist on the Flash story, Travis Mercer. Very well done as well. And again, just a very good story. Energy, is kinetic, energy, action-packed, humor, nailed the characterization. Another reason why Jeremy Adams, thank God DC knows what they got, and they keep giving him more work, and all the power to him. So I thought this was really good. Did you get a chance to read this?
Oh yeah, I read it. I loved. What are my notes here? Yeah, I loved that it was a Deathstroke prequel. Fun. Definitely could be more. Because it ends here, and the Flash story ends here, and supposedly it's directly into Teen Titans. But Deathstroke's wearing this black and gray costume. So how does he go from this black and gray costume to the blue and orange that we're used to? But yeah, I love the stories. It was great to see these classic team ups: Green Arrow, Green Lantern, Barry Allen, Flash, and Green Lantern. Really a lot of fun. All right, up next, Jenny Sparks issue number 5 from writer Tom King, Jeff Spokes on the art, Clayton Cowell on letters. My notes on this say a bit smaller than I thought, and that references the whole story itself. This is a bit more of an intimate story than I first thought it might be, especially considering the power level that Captain Atom has in this version. You know, it is a Black Label book, so we get a little bit of the origin story here of how Jenny Sparks is sort of the hall monitor, I'll say, of the superheroes, with Clark and Bruce Wayne, or Batman and Superman, however you want to put it. I guess maybe I should say Clark and Matches Malone, because it's Bruce and his Matches Malone guys. And we see them recruit Jenny Sparks, and she says, you know, could you take us out? Or they ask her, actually, Clark and Matches ask her, hey, could you take us out? Could you kill us if you had to, if one of us went rogue? And she's like, yeah, basically I could. And so that's why they basically are recruiting them. Hey, if one of us steps out of line, what have you, then, you know, you'll take us out. And the other part of the issue is we're getting this Black Label version of Captain Atom's origin, which is very similar to the origins we've seen of Captain Atom previously, both pre-crisis and post-crisis, ever since he came over to DC when DC bought the property. But all that being said, Jenny Sparks doesn't know how she's going to defeat Captain Atom. You know, as powerful as she is, and with her, ability to take out a lot of different heroes with her abilities, and especially with her kind of her personality, her attitude, if you will, that nobody is sacred. You know, she doesn't have some code of ethics. You know, she just kind of gets the job done. That's her code, the code that she lives by. You know, she does what's necessary. But she knows in a lot of ways she's outmatched here. This version of Captain Atom, it sort of extrapolates out to kind of his final evolution, if you will. You know, if you have the ability to control, nuclear bonds, it's an incredible amount of power, and being able to manipulate the building blocks of existence on their fundamental level. You're almost like a god. And so how is she going to save the day? And I mentioned it previously when Rocky was like, yeah, the Justice League's dead here. Yes and no, he could bring them back to life. But the point being that Jenny Sparks is like, they're all dead. That's how powerful this guy is. Did I really bite off more that I can chew? And how am I going to defeat him? And she actually turns to the doctor that was one of the hostages of Captain Atom when the story starts, and he's a psychologist, a psychiatrist, and she's asking him, hey, you were there with him. He cured you of your cancer. You're sort of an expert on human behavior, being that you have a background in psychology and psychiatry. What do you think the answer is? Like, how can I defeat him? So again, it's a little bit more intimate than I thought. It's not this hey, it's going to be some big all-out brawl. It's a little bit. She's going to have to use her head. She's going to have to come up with more of a cerebral or perhaps an emotional solution to this problem. And I find that to be really interesting. Again, just smaller in scale in terms of how she's going to have to solve it. She's not going to be able to solve it with some big, world-changing abilities. It's going to be either reaching him emotionally or reaching him on an intellectual level rather than beating him with some sort of, superpower. And I find that to be really interesting. So in my mind, another really great character piece from Tom King. As much as I feel like, man, Captain Atom, they really, over at DC, they really give him the short end of the stick a lot of times. Make him out to be a villain or what have you. I just feel like he doesn't get his. I think he's a great character. Like I always go back to that New 52 run from J.T. Krull and Freddie Williams,
Yeah.
which I thought was just fantastic. And it doesn't get enough due, and it's almost like they're slowly rolling back some of the changes that those guys made to Captain Atom, which made him a bit more unique, made him feel a little more. And they even said when they were on the show, those two creators, they even said, yeah, the prompt they were given when they were bringing Captain Atom back for the New 52 was take inspiration from Dr. Manhattan, which is so interesting, right? Because Dr. Manhattan, the character from Watchmen by Alan Moore, is based on Captain Atom. All those characters were, in Watchmen were based on, was it Charlton characters, what have you?
Yeah.
And so, so you've got Captain Atom based on Dr. Manhattan, who was based on Captain Atom, which is really interesting. So anyway, I'm loving what Tom King is doing here. And the art by Jeff Spokes is just fantastic. He's got a real sort of realistic, grounded style. He does his own color work, which really makes the art sing. And yeah, just a big fan of the series overall. Anything to add quickly?
Yeah, I like the fact that the old man, the psychiatrist here. The irony is that when Captain Atom basically saved his life by removing the cancer, he was actually being cruel to the young, cruel to the older man. Because the old guy wanted to die because his wife had died of cancer a few years before. He was dying himself, and it was interesting. It was an interesting sort of allegory to the fact that he made the comment that Captain Atom was a god that couldn't distinguish between cruelty and kindness, and I thought that was very telling and very interesting. That you think that if you're a god, all the things you do as a god, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it, and it just sort of showed that what even we as readers thought was an act of kindness before, that, oh, maybe Captain Atom isn't that bad. Well, once we get to know the character of the man himself, we realize, geez, he screwed up even that. And I thought it was interesting. And I still am openly wondering how is Jenny Sparks going to defeat Captain Atom. She mentioned that she wants to kill him. It's not like the Justice League to ask Jenny Sparks to actually, I don't think they'd want her to kill Captain Atom, but she says she needs to find a way to kill him. But is that what's going to happen? We don't know. Is the Justice League really dead? Like you said, you could probably bring them back. This is probably headed to some kind of redemption for Captain Atom. But how is Jenny Sparks, with the help of this old man, psychiatrist, gonna pull that off? I'm curious to see how this ends.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see for sure. So,
Yeah.
All right. Up next, Milestone Universe, The Shadow Cabinet, issue number 2, written by Joseph Illidge, Daryl Banks, and Atagan Ilhan on art. Christopher Sotomayor on colors, and world design on letters. Continuing the kind of the overall story of the Milestone Universe, because it's not just a Shadow Cabinet here. We've got Hardware here. We've got Rocket from Icon and Rocket. Unfortunately, that's part of the problem. My notes here say it's a bit inscrutable, which means it's like you couldn't just pick up Shadow Cabinet issue 1, issue 2, and understand what's going on. You have to have read everything that's gone previously. Shadowhawk, not Shadowhawk, Static shows up here as well. And it's sort of the problem. Like, it's a tough problem for Milestone to have because they have a limited number of creators that they want working on their books. And they want them to have high quality, but it means they don't always have a presence on the stands. I've talked about this before. And so it's a little bit tough in terms of, pacing, not for this particular issue in and of itself, but just pacing for the universe overall. I think what they've done in bringing it back and making it fresh is really good. But because they have such little presence on the stands that they're easily forgotten, out of sight, out of mind. And it feels like, I don't know, maybe you just do like a Milestone quarterly where you have, it come out, 4 times a year, and you make sure you cover all the different properties, what have you. I don't know what the answer is. This could be good. But I just worry that it's not reaching the audience that it might need to in order to stick, if you know what I mean. So,
Yeah.
um,
I, I would add to it that I do want to give some credit to the writer here because he clearly knows the history of these characters. But then so do you and I. We've reviewed all the Shadow
yeah,
Cabinet stuff and the series and Static, and I recognized all the callbacks, and I appreciated this. I actually enjoyed reading this. I actually read this twice because I actually really enjoyed this universe. I feel like I'm getting to know more and more of it, and so I actually enjoy it. And part of me doesn't mind the fact that it's not always spelled out. And I will give some credit because in the writing, it does try to give us enough that I. I think maybe some people could get into it a little bit with a little bit of patience. Because I remember, God, we sometimes think, I remember when I was younger, I could get into a comic book right in the middle of an arc. Well, who's to say adults can't now? So sometimes I think I was smarter when I was 10 years old than I am now. When I make comments that, oh yeah, this is kind of a little bit difficult to get into, but I think this is something. There's a lot of rewards to get from this, but as we've said before, and particularly this week, it's got so much competition. This is one of those universes that unfortunately I think is just getting lost in the shuffle, and it's unfortunate because I think there's a lot of great characters here to explore.
yeah. I mean, Joseph Village works at Milestone the first time around, so I would definitely hope that he he knows these characters and knows what's going on.
Yeah.
All right. Up next, another book that's not on either of our top 10, Titan number 18, written by John Layman, Pete Woods on art and colors, Wes Abbott on letters. Again, there's nothing particularly wrong with this, continuing with the story of Donna Troy leading the Titans, and a little bit of friction between her and Dick Grayson. Friction with the Titans altogether, really, deciding to stay in Titans Tower rather than on the Justice League Watchtower, and continuing the story that Layman has been telling, kind of the subplot of, hey, it's Clock King, hey, it's Deathstroke. They're putting these challenges and putting together a team to face the Titans, because this new version of the Clock King realizes when he tried to attack them directly, it didn't go well. So now they're putting together a new version of the Crime Syndicate, which is really interesting. So we'll see how that all plays out. Again, the Pete Woods art is fantastic. Does a great job on colors as well. So,
Yeah, a question I have is that when I think of the Crime Syndicate, I think of Earth 3 villains, and so I I'm a little bit confused there. Putting together the Crime Syndicate, I'm thinking, what are they talking about? The
I think
Crime
it's just a
Syndicate?
great, yeah, I think it's just a great name to use. So,
Yeah,
yeah. Cool.
and I should say that I'm still curious because Deathstroke's a part of this. We still don't know what happened to Deathstroke at the end of Dark Crisis because he's around here. So what happened to him? So there's still a lot of revelations about Deathstroke that we don't know yet. And so for followers of the Titans, that's one question that I'm hoping that there's going to be further exploration of that in future issues.
Yeah, 100%. All right, next up, another book that's not on either of our top tens. It's the final issue of John Constantine, Hellblazer, Dead in America, number 11. I sound like a broken record here, but again, another really fantastic issue, but just didn't have room for it in my top 5. Simon Spurrier, the writer, Aaron Campbell on the art, Jordi Belair on colors, Steve Wands on letters. Just a fantastic ending to the story. It felt so fitting. In a way, it's almost the best issue of the series. And my favorite part of this issue is when John Constantine is given his speech when he first goes to hell, and he's facing kind of the endless ones or what have you, and the way he's describing America and how America is right now or what have you, it's so tragic in a way, and he tells it and speaks to them in that kind of trademark Constantine way where he doesn't pull his punches, and he gets to the heart of the matter. And it's just fantastic. And the Aaron Campbell art is very visceral and suits the story very, very well. So I would almost say, like, if someone is familiar with who John Constantine is, but they haven't ever read a bunch, a lot of his Hellblazer run, or Justice League Dark or whatever, and you want to give them a quintessential John Constantine story that really shows what a bastard he can be, but also that deep down, maybe way deep down, his heart's in the right place. You give him this, and then in terms of Cy Spurrier work, this is just a biting political statement on what America is now, and it's sort of tragic in a way. But as an American, I can't sit here and say that this sort of editorial on what's wrong with America isn't 100% accurate. It's all about the haves and the have-nots, and this is not just I shouldn't single out just the American or America or the United States as a country. This is a problem, worldwide. It's and it all comes down to the fact that the vast amount of wealth in the world is controlled by fewer and fewer people than it ever has been in the history of the world. That's what it all comes down to. The amount of people that are the haves has gotten to be so small, and the have-nots has gotten to be so big. There's just this wealth disparity worldwide that is like, I don't know how we don't end up having some kind of massive world war where all the poor people rise up in rebellion sometime in the next 100 years because it's just the disparity is out of hand. So anyway, if you're so inclined, if you're a John Constantine fan, definitely check it out.
I want to give a quick comment on this because I think that what Cy Spurrier did here, I thought was really my favorite moment in this finale was when Constantine, he finally obtains the grains of sand to return to Morpheus, and it's the grains of sand that helped aggravate American society that made America what it was, and all the just how dysfunctional America is as a country. A lot of it, some of it flowed as a result of these grains of sand that were stolen from Morpheus, and Morpheus himself, the Sandman, wants to enact some vengeance on the people that stole it and vengeance on America, and it's John Constantine of all people preaching to Morpheus about forgiveness, saying, really, you might want to think about some forgiveness here. Basically reminding Morpheus that if you really want to help people, part of, it's not just about vengeance and you want to show how powerful and mighty and powerful you are. Maybe show a little bit of redemption and forgiveness yourself. And that's exactly what Morpheus does, but he does so but he also hates John Constantine, so he restores John Constantine back to his full health, except for the fact he restores John Constantine's cancer in his lungs as just a last bit of sort of bitterness there. And I thought that was very telling. And so and I just thought that, isn't it interesting that John Constantine, this a-hole that all of us sort of, he's a character we all love to hate, that it's through him that he helped to encourage even the Sandman to have some degree of forgiveness for a screwed up country. And it's not just the country, it's the whole world, about just how screwed up America is. We can't blame it all on grains of sand. And even if we could, maybe maybe some forgiveness, because we're ultimately human after all, and we still make some catastrophic mistakes from time to time. I thought that Cy Spurrier had a hell of a lot to say during this series. I didn't understand all of it all the time. Sometimes I had to get certain things explained to me, but it's one of those series that it reaps a lot of rewards. And I think that when this is collected as a trade, and if people want to be challenged in their thinking and the way they look at their America, this is definitely something they want to check out.
Yeah, I agree. So, again, if you're a Constantine fan, it's definitely a must read. So, all right, up next, one that's on my top 10. Man, I had so much fun reading this. It's Wonder Woman issue number 16 from Tom King. Writer Bruno Redondo fills in on the pencils for Daniel Sampere on this particular issue. Caio Felipe on inks, Adriana Lucas on colors, Clayton Cowell on letters. And it's Fury Part 2, and it's basically Detective Chimp, and we know what a big Detective Chimp fan Tom King is, and it's Detective Chimp kind of investigating the Sovereign, if you will, and he uncovers a lot about the Sovereign and who he is and his history. But here's the thing: it's Detective Chimp because Detective Chimp is a DC character and a DC property, and he is basically the one to investigate the Sovereign. But if you've ever seen an episode of Columbo, which I love Columbo, it's such a fantastic show. I know a lot of comic creators that love Columbo, and Tom King among them. Tom King may be one of the biggest Columbo fans I know. Detective Chimp is Columbo. He's Columbo in this issue, and it is so fun to have him just do the just one more thing or one last question or whatever, and even to the point where the Sovereign is sort of aware of what Detective Chimp is doing, and Detective Chimp is asking these questions, and Sovereign, he kind of paints the Sovereign into a corner, just like Columbo, and it's so much fun. I was grinning from ear to ear the entire time that I was reading this. The Daniel Samper art, or sorry, the Bruno Redondo art is fantastic. You know, him and Daniel have a very similar art style, so it definitely works. Um, and it's just really really fun. Now, interspersed within this, we do have Wonder Woman showing up here or there, but for the most part, yeah, this is a Columbo story, and it moves the story along, and that's the brilliance of it. That Tom King can have fun doing a Columbo like story starring Detective Chimp in the Wonder Woman book, um, and have it move the story forward. And again, the Sovereign sort of painted into a corner, and there's a backup as well. Um, but I want to give Rocky a chance to comment. This didn't make your top five. I don't know.
No,
Maybe you're not familiar
didn't
with
make my top. Wouldn't
Columbo.
have made my top 18. I didn't enjoy this. I I I'm a huge Columbo fan, but I picked up. I want to read a Wonder Woman comic, not a Columbo story. But I just I'm not gonna. I don't want to be a negative Nelly. Did it have its moments? Was this? If you're a Columbo fan, was the dialogue well written for a Columbo story? With it did. It absolutely. Almost verbatim, this was Peter Falk as Columbo talking as through Bibbo the detective chimp there, and it had its moments, and it had its moments of humor. For me, it's just that I just wanted I've wanted this story to be taken more seriously, and it really made the Sovereign look. I think the Sovereign looks like a Mr. Magoo like character to begin with. I think he's always been sort of a parody of a parody, and it's just really hard to take him seriously. The Sovereign, if you really want to get into in order to make this work, uh, he Tom King had to change the story in such a way that, in my view, made the Sovereign look even more like a moron and an idiot. I mean, in order to how this. I mean, the Sovereign is just not that particularly bright a villain. He's not. He's not even remotely C or D list to me, and it's the failure of in the narration, which is still by the Sovereign, this Mr. Magoo like character, and his ultimate defeat. I mean, Tom King does this, and it works sometimes, and I've given it compliments when I felt it really worked. He'll do allegories, different fairy tales and myths, and he'll incorporate them in his stories. And here he's really good at doing tribute stories like this with Columbo. But for me, I wanted Wonder Woman to be the one stepping up to the plate to doing the problem solving. I wanted Wonder Woman to be the one. This is part two of Fury, and it's just Wonder Woman is she just seems to be like a second class hero in my mind in this storyline, and it just feels like just yet another example of just Wonder Woman not stepping up to the plate and just being a guest star. And I mean, she's played almost no role in defeating the Sovereign other than having her friends do it or her fellow Amazons
That's
do
so
it.
great. That's what's so great. That's what's I love it. First of all, I love you, Sam. I don't want to be a negative Nelly, but then you go on your tirade. It's so funny.
Well, no, I know, but
You
I'm just
can't,
saying,
can't
like
help,
I
can't help.
acknowledge that
No,
there's a
no,
lot of
it's
people
fine.
that are going to enjoy it. So I
No,
don't want to. I'm just saying, for me personally, it just never hit. But I
no,
can
and I get that.
acknowledge
I
why
get
it's
that.
good. Yeah.
My point is,
So
you're like, I don't want to be negative, but then you
yeah.
tell us all your
Well,
negatives. You can't help
you know,
yourself. That's what I love
yeah.
about it. But
I
no,
just
I take your point. You know, I certainly wouldn't say that Wonder Woman is the main character of this particular issue.
mm,
And I'm okay with that, and you're not, and I think that's the difference. And your opinion is completely valid because she is a minor character in this book. But I'll just push back a little bit on what I love about it. And yeah, it might make the Sovereign seem a little bit weaker, but that's what I enjoy about it. Like Wonder Woman at this point is more interested in bonding with Lizzie than she is in confronting the Sovereign directly herself, which I totally understand because Lizzie is for all intents and purposes a newborn here. But that's what I love about it. That in a way, it's almost Wonder Woman is so much better than the Sovereign that she doesn't even have to confront him directly. She's sending, last issue she sent the Wonder Girls, if you will, the Wonder Girl trio, or along with Cheetah, to take out the Sovereign's kind of financial resources. Now she's sending Detective Chimp out there to rattle him or whatever. So it's like she's playing chess while the Sovereign's playing checkers. She's that much like that's the way I'm taking it. Now I can understand why you would say, if you're not taking it that way, or you want to read a Wonder Woman story, and this isn't really a Wonder Woman story. Like I get that it's a little bit of a setup for the final confrontation, I think, where it will be the Wonder Woman against the Sovereign. But I take your point. Like it does make the Sovereign seem like he's not really even a threat in a way. But to me, I'm taking it as that just kind of elevates Wonder Woman. Like she's kind of evolved. She's kind of evolved past him already. In a way, he's already defeated. He just hasn't lost yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
no, I know exactly what you mean, and
yeah.
and I get it. I get it, and I guess it is what it is. It was just, I guess it's just unexpected. My expectations are subverted, but in a way that I wanted a little bit. I'd like a little bit more action.
Yeah,
But,
it's not, and it's definitely not. It's not a superhero. This is not a superhero story at all. Like none of the characters in this book, like you could swap them out for like non-powered people, and you could literally tell the exact same story. So
yeah.
I get why if you're a big Wonder Woman fan, you might not necessarily enjoy it. But the backup's really interesting. It's also written by Tom King. Kari Randolph is the artist. Alex Guermas on colors. Clayton Cowell on letters. And it's called The Secret History of the Sovereign. And we find out the Sovereign has a sister. She was first born. She was actually going to be the one to maybe follow in her father's footsteps, but maybe not because, the whole misogyny thing of it. It's Jimmy Olsen who's giving this report on his like YouTube channel or whatever. So it's a lot of fun. It gives some context. It does tie into the story. Clark Kent is there as well. And it's maybe the way that that Tom King is kind of introducing this idea that at the end of the Sovereign story, which I think ends in, I want to say it's issue number 19, so 3 more issues. I got a press release about it from DC the other day. Like how does the genie go back in the bottle, so to speak, with the whole Amazons are evil and that sort of thing. So maybe it's going to be like, Jimmy Olsen's social media type thing that says, hey, this is what actually happened. This who was manipulating events and what have you. So I think it's a little bit setting that up as well as, again, fleshing out the history of the Sovereign a little bit. So anything to add about the backup?
Well, it would have been real nice if we were. Again, it's a criticism, but we're told. I mean, it was actually an interesting history of the Sovereign. It explains a little bit more of his misogyny and the grounding of it. I would have liked to have seen that story played out in the previous. There was plenty of room in the previous 16 issues, 15 issues to do that. But we're told in a Jimmy Olsen backup report in an 8-page backup, and it's just again there's a story there. Tom King seems to know what he wants to say about the Sovereign in this history. It just seems. It's just the pacing throughout this whole 16 issues just seems off to me. But again, there is a story here. It's just, I guess it's just the way it's structured and it's being told that sort of is a little off-putting for me. But.
Yeah, I could see that. So, all right. Anyway, let's move on. Absolute Batman issue number 3 is up next. This is on your top 5. Would have been on my top 5 as well. Scott Snyder is the writer. Nick Dragotta on art. Colors by Frank Martin. Letters by Clayton Cowles. This is the final issue of the first arc, and it's only issue number 3. So give us your thoughts on The Zoo, part 3.
I got to tell you, this really surprised me, the ending here. This was, I never saw this ending coming out. This is right out of left field, and I got to give Scott Snyder credit. This continues to be, I know it doesn't matter. This is such a wonderful problem to have. Which absolute title do we like more? Absolute Batman, Absolute Superman, or Absolute Wonder Woman? Well, I'm going back and forth between Superman and Batman. But now suddenly I read Absolute Batman number 3, and now Absolute Batman number 3 is my new favorite. It's my new favorite. I keep flip flopping and going back and forth, but there's just a lot of substance here, and we finally get Selina. We get to see a young Selina Kyle and her relationship, a close relationship with a young Bruce Wayne. And it starts off with them sort of running off rooftops and establishing their young relationship. We have further flashbacks to the day that Bruce Wayne's father was killed at the zoo. We see the ongoing. We see them in the massive dump truck. Alfred and Batman in the trying to escape Gotham PD, and it's and Alfred is essentially telling Batman that the Black Mask is likely going to be contacting you because the Black Mask is ultra powerful. And essentially, it's the world building here that Scott Snyder has done is just, I think, amazing in just 3 issues, because the Black Mask is part of an organization, or of a massive organization that's building a bunch of arcs: Arc A, Arc B, Arc C, Arc D, all over the world, and eventually Arc M, obviously a reference to Arkham Asylum. Arc M is essentially they're like glorified like prisons, and that's going to be built near Gotham City. But the Black Mask is ultra powerful, and what's very interesting here is, as Bruce Wayne tries to gains more knowledge about just how tech savvy and how technologically powerful and massive the Black Mask's organization is, through the help of his friend the Riddler, Edward, he's made the Black Mask makes him an offer, and Alfred even predicted it and told him, look, the Black Mask just wants to pay you off to lay low for a little bit, and he'll probably offer you hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's exactly what the Black Mask does. So just think of it's so. I just find it so. I think it's a cool plot point that Black Mask is literally, he's paying off the hero. Look, lay off for 2 weeks and we'll give you $200 million. Just lay off. We got something planned. We're doing something. And they're setting up this Arc M, this giant arc off of Gotham City Harbor. And it's very, very interesting. And what's more extraordinary is that Batman, young Bruce Wayne, he accepts the offer because he's thinking, think of what, as Alfred tells him, think what you could do with that much money. I mean, look what you've done with no money, with all your gadgets and toys and your brilliance. What could you do with $200 million? Incredible. Also, Black Mask, we learn more about him. We get Commissioner Bullock meets with the Black Mask. And he ends up beating the hell. He watches the Black Mask really go to town, and just almost looks like he kills a guy in like a UFC fight type of situation. We really see just how deadly the Black Mask is. So, but this Black Mask is definitely a very different Black Mask than in his mainstream iteration, and very, very interesting. It's this Black Mask seems to have his hands in all kinds of things. Obviously, he's corrupt and he's ultra powerful, but he's also very skilled as a fighter, and he's also working with the police department. So he's got his hands in different things, manipulating more. He's manipulating many chess pieces on the board, including Batman himself, and along the way, we see more about the past relationship between Bruce Wayne and his friends. And another one of those things that I just love about it is what Scott Snyder does. It's really an inspired idea to take Batman's rogues gallery and say, no, they're not his rogues gallery anymore. He grew up with them. They're his friends. The Penguin, the Riddler, Catwoman, they're all his friends. They grew up. And there's a wonderful scene in the movie that, in the movie, feels like a movie. There's a wonderful scene in the comic where they get together and they go to a theater and they watch the Zorro movie. Which is, of course, the Zorro movie has a different meaning in the context of this iteration of Batman, because it's something where his friends are watching it together and he's with his friends. He's not with his parents prior to the night that they were both killed. And of course, we know his mother's still alive. His mother's running for office. She's and she refuses to, he wants her to lay low, but she refuses to because it's not in her nature. Just there's a lot of moving parts here. I love how complex this is. I love how this is filled with a lot of subtext and Easter eggs and substance to the story. And more so even than Absolute Superman, which I love, and very much more so than Absolute Wonder Woman, which is probably it's probably my least favorite, but I'm still enjoying as well. So I love this, and I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. There's hints as to who this J.K. Holdings is in terms of building the arc. I think that might be this Joker character that's in the background. What do you think about how this arc has ended? Oh, you're on mute, my friend. Sorry.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, what I really loved is we got into the politics of Gotham, which was really unexpected. and I've already read issue 4. I gotta say so. Um, and we and I mentioned talking to Scott recently, that episode that comes out on Christmas Eve, and obviously we touched on this. I asked him about putting the Joker in the first issue, and why he chose to do that and what have you. So look for that. But yeah, what I loved here was the subversion of expectations, as you said, with Bruce deciding, hey, I'm going to take the money from Black Mask. My guess is he's going to take the money, but he's not going to stop pursuing the Black Mask. And maybe he's just setting a trap and he won't even take the money at all. So it's just such a political book, not that it takes a political stance, but just in terms of, the relationship, this idea of the haves and the have-nots that I was talking about earlier when I was talking about Constantine. There's still plenty of action here. And again, just this idea that this younger generation is not going to be stopped, basically. This version of Batman is not going to be stopped. He's going to keep going. He's going to keep, advancing forward. He's Batman AF, was focused on
Yeah.
in the second issue. And that's what I really enjoyed. And so, yeah, this is a little bit of a setup issue in terms of putting all the different individuals that sort of the movers and shakers of Gotham City, and what Bruce is really up against, and how in a way the system is stacked against him. And Snyder's come out and talked about that, right? Like this whole idea of the Batman in the main line, the main DC universe, sort of being part of that system, being part of the system of order, if you will. You follow the rules and you do what you're supposed to, and you beat the bad guys or whatever. But this idea of in the absolute universe of that system in a way being inherently corrupt in a way, or flawed, because it's built on dark side energy, and that goes to this Joker, this JK or whoever he is, being part of the system, and how he needs to be being torn down. And this is a Batman that is, I don't want to say going to sow chaos, but he's going to fight against the corruption of that system, and he's going to keep fighting and keep fighting, no matter what odds are stacked against him. And so, yeah, a little bit of a setup issue here in terms of setting up these different political opponents in Gotham City, and putting them all in place to, again, advance the story forward. So we already know that issue 4 is a different artist. Gabriel Walta, I think, handles the art, to give Dragotta a chance to get caught up for the next arc. And it's a very, very personal story. So, I'd say the first issue was really establishing Gotham in a way. And the second issue was establishing the force of nature that Batman is, this version of Batman is. The third one is kind of establishing the political climate of Gotham City itself. And then the fourth one, we get into the emotions of Batman. So that's how I would kind of break down the first 4 issues. And I'm really enjoying it. I haven't read the third issue of Absolute Superman yet, so I can't. I mean, I think Absolute Superman is still my favorite. I wanted to talk to Scott about some Absolute Superman too, but we ran out of time. But next time. But yeah, I think Absolute Superman is still my favorite. But the gap has closed significantly now that I have read this issue, and issue 4 is just it's so good. Issue 4 is by far my favorite of the series so far. But this was really good. This one definitely would have been in my top 10 or my top 5 as well, if you hadn't picked it. So, all right, last book we're going to talk about. Now, I've already chatted about this with Ram V, the writer. It's New Gods #1. We obviously didn't get spoilery because it was weeks ago, but we'll get a little spoilery here, as we always do. So it's The Falling Sky Part 1. In addition to Ramvi on writing duties, we have Evan Cagle handling the art. Jorge Fornes handles the art on pages 1 through 4. Francesco Segala on colors, and Tom Napolitano on letters. This is in your top 5. Would have been on, or sorry, yeah, your top 5 would have been on my top 5 as well. So give us your thoughts on New Gods.
Well, I was actually surprised. I was surprised at how actually how accessible this was. I thought this was going to be a little bit more esoteric because I guess I think of Ram V and I think of he got a little esoteric and a little bit out there with his swamp thing, and he could be a little bit flowery with language, and he was certainly like that with aspects of his Detective Comics run, and dealing with mythology and spirituality and gods. I thought this was going to frankly be a little bit out there. I was a little bit worried it was going to be too out there, to be frank. But I'm happy to report, at least in my reading of this, I thought this was surprisingly accessible and a much easier read than I was anticipating, to be quite blunt. And I like it. And I like the character work. I mean, we're dealing with we know most people, but even if you're not familiar with the mythology of Apocalypse and New Genesis, there's enough here that it sort of explains. You get the gist of it. We know that Darkseid is dead, and that throws the universe into chaos. And Highfathers, they're concerned about that because they know with Darkseid being gone, there's going to be other forces of darkness that are going to be rushing into the void to fill that up. In the meantime, there's a prophecy involving the birth of a child. And this very much concerns the Highfather. And he wants to call his greatest warrior in, and of course that's Orion. And there's a moment here, and you can already see the character work where Light Ray thinks it's him because Light Ray is a son of Highfather, but of course it's not you. He says, "Not you, child." He's looking for Orion, and Orion is going to be the assassin that goes to kill this child, this child of prophecy that is going to be born, following the death of Darkseid. And so we end up with Scott Free and Big Barda make an appearance here, and of course they have got their newborn. And that's really where the human element comes into play. And I think to the credit of Ram V, that's really the humanizing element here, because I was wondering how is he going to ground this. And of course, you got the perfect character with Mr. Miracle, Scott Free, and Big Barda. Scott Free being the most human, and he's the father, and they got their own child, and I think the child's name is Jessica. I think it is. I think it's. I might be wrong on the name, but I think it's yeah. In any event, Orion shows up.
Barda and Scott's.
Yeah.
Baby, is that who you're talking about? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jessica.
I think it's Jessica. If I'm wrong about it, I'll correct myself as I go along here. But in any event, what I find interesting here is that Orion is given this mission to kill this child. Highfather doesn't tell him really why so much, but Orion, Olivia, thank you, and it's Orion has to kill this child, and it's not Scott Free or Big Barda's child he has to kill, but he goes to Mr. Miracle. He goes to Scott and says, "Look, you're the only one who can stop me. You're the one who can escape. You can help this child escape from me. I'm going to give you 7 days to find this child, and you keep this child away from me because I'm going to come for this child to kill it. I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do it, and if I have to, and you're the only one I know who could possibly stop me." And I think that's very interesting but yet Orion, he has to follow Highfather's orders. And Orion, of course, is the son of Darkseid. And so, but raised by Highfather. So that's very interesting. And so where exactly is that going to take us? What is the significance of this child? Well, we find out at the end, this child apparently is born, in India. In Columbar, India, this child, these parents are trying to escape with their child, and apparently there's an event where this looks like a godlike child is falling from the sky and is involved in protecting this other child, or maybe this child manifested powers. It's a little bit unclear to me, but in any event, one has to wonder, okay, is this the child? Is likely this is the child that is this child of prophecy. And if a careful read of the dialogue, there's at the very beginning you can see almost like various symbols with the prophecy itself. It's at the beginning and it's at the very end. So at the beginning of the issue, on a page that shows Orion's face. And you see these symbols of various planets in a circle, and you see the prophecy itself spelled out around this cascade of symbols. And that exact wording is duplicated near the end as this particular child manifests itself in the final pages of the issue. So it's very interesting. We know with Darkseid gone, what does this mean? There's still so many questions, but it's a good opening arc, and it's done in a very sophisticated way and in an adult way and an accessible way. It's both godlike. It introduces us to the cosmology of the larger DC universe, while also grounds us in a very human story that will involve Mr. Miracle essentially protecting a child, being a father himself, and undoubtedly to see Big Barda and Mr. Miracle trying to protect a child from Orion. And all the other gods, and undoubtedly the Light Ray and his feeling of maybe inferiority to Orion. You can already see the beginnings of some family dysfunction there and how it's going to play out. Very well done by Ram V for an opening issue, and definitely made my top 5. So what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I mean, it's definitely leaning into a lot of the themes that Ram was talking about with family and duty. And especially when we talk about this mission that Orion's been given, right? And he says himself, he's, I don't want to kill a kid. That's why he goes to Scott Free and tells him, he goes, but you know me, I'm going to follow orders, so to speak. He doesn't say those exact words, but you get the gist. Like, please go and save this child, Scott. Like, you're the one person that can keep him away from me, because I'm going to do what Highfather has, tasked me to do. So this idea of duty, over family even. And that's just a small part of the story. I mean, my favorite part of the issue definitely was the interaction between the two brothers on the bench. But that being said, it's a much bigger story, and we get that in the beginning, a couple of pages, with this whole idea of this mythology that Ramvi is layering onto the mythology of the new gods that Jack Kirby has already created when he first did his work at DC back in the 70s. So there's a lot. This is a big story, big in scope. That's part of what I enjoy about it as well. We're getting all these little hints of things that are to come. The art on the final page, seeing that kid that was born in India. That is the kid that Scott Free's going to have to protect. The Evan Cagle art is really fantastic. We have that part of the story that's going to happen. We have the idea of, hey, are the current new gods, is it time for them to become the old gods? And I guess the old gods become the even older gods, and we get a new version of the new gods. Like, who's to say? Metron and Light Ray and just all of this about to play out, this huge tapestry of story. And on top of that, we also know, we've been told by Rom himself, we've been told by Scott Snyder, we've been told by Joshua Williamson, kind of the architects of the all-in era of DC right now, how central the New Gods title is going to be to finding out how the Absolute Universe ties in to the main DC universe, and really telling, Darkseid himself is a new god. So, what is Darkseid up to? What is the new status quo? This is going to be a really important book. And that's kind of another aspect that we're just barely getting hints of in this particular issue. So, Rom said it. I think Scott said it to me as well. Like, the new gods are never going to be as connected, or never have been as connected to the main DC universe and what's going on with it than they are going to be in this series. So if you want to understand what's going on with Darkseid, what happened after he died, and it, was reborn, Absolute Universe, and all that, this is the book you need to be reading. And the art by Evan Cagle is just next level. It's just amazing. Nothing but good things to say about this book. This was one that definitely would have been in my top 5 if it hadn't been in yours, and it was one that I considered for book of the week. So, well, that does it for the books we're going to talk about in detail this week. There are, and God knows it was enough of them, and then there are a number of collections that are out this week as well. We have Superman Volume 3. This is the Josh Williamson run of Superman. So it collects Superman's 16 through 18, as well as Night Terror Superman 1 and 2, which honestly you can skip. Those Night Terrors issues weren't really that important. Honestly, they're not even that important to the Night Terrors. That stuff's all sort of self-contained. But the Joshua Williamson era of Superman has been really fantastic. So definitely recommend picking that up. Also, latest DC Finest is out. It's Catwoman Lifelines trade paperback, which collects a bunch of different Catwoman stories in that new format. So that's out if you're so inclined. We also have Batman Bruce Wayne Murder Turned Fugitive Omnibus hardcover, which collects that Bruce Wayne fugitive storyline from back in I think it was the late 90s. Um,
Yeah.
wasn't even the 2000s. So that was a really fun run, and definitely collects it like that entire story. I mean, it's 1,184 pages, so it's a massive tome. Also, we have Robin, Son of Batman. That's the Patrick Gleason Robin volume. There's a deluxe edition hardcover of that, 408 pages for $50, which collects Robin, Son of Batman, the series, the special, and a couple of Superman issues that are a crossover as well. There's also a Superman Kryptonite Deluxe Edition hardcover, which collects Darwin Cook and Tim Sale's Superman Confidential 1 through 5, as well as 11 with some sketches and stuff from Darwin Cook. Also, the Superman 100 project, which was a Hero Initiative project, which is basically 100 original covers to Superman #6, which the Hero Initiative did as a way to raise money for themselves, fundraiser project. Really encourage you to check that out. It's really awesome. Multiversity, Harley Quinn screws up the DC multiverse 1 through 6. That's the Frank Thierry Harley Quinn series that sort of ties into the cartoon in a way. So that's out this week as well if you're so inclined. So. Time for book of the week, Rocky. Was it an easy choice for you this week? Tough choice?
Uh, Actually, it was actually easy. I mean, I did enjoy a lot of the comics, but I have to go with Absolute Batman #3. It was just that good, and it was just. I just love it, and been enjoying the Absolute Universe, and the twist at the end. I thought it was pretty inspired, and I think it was pretty cool what Scott Snyder has done, and Bruce Wayne's choice in terms of accepting pay, basically being paid off. That's how he gets money. Is that he actually takes money. In a way, he sort of compromises his principles, arguably by getting bad, but he uses a bad guy's money to fight the very bad guy that gave him the money. I think there's a sense of poetic justice to that that's almost fitting in a crazy kind of way, and I kind of like how it was done. So, Absolute Batman is definitely my choice. What about yourself?
Yeah, so that's my second pick. That would have been #2, with New Gods being. I'm sorry, that would have been Absolute Batman would have been #3. New Gods would have been #2 for me. I ranked all 19 books. But so my #1 is Wonder Woman. Like and I get your criticism, and it's valid. You know, I want to read a Wonder Woman book, not a Columbo book. But man, I just love Columbo so much, um, and it made me smile, and I think it advanced the Wonder Woman narrative forward, especially with the backup. It was great to see Bruno Redondo's art. So yeah, I just loved it. I thought it was really fantastic. So
Yeah.
anyway, that does it for this episode, everybody. Don't forget, if you're listening on the audio only feed, to head over to YouTube, do a search for Rocky's channel, Comic Space Boom, ! That's where you can leave comments, see the fantastic art when we talk about these books every week. Like, comment, subscribe. All that stuff really helps us with coverage and getting access to various books and publishers and titles and all that. If you're checking us out on YouTube, I encourage you to go to whatever your favorite podcasting app or platform is and do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe, which gives you access to thousands and thousands of past episodes, as well as all the Comic Source content moving forward beyond just the DC spotlights that show up on Rocky's channel. You can also head over to the Comic Source on YouTube, where a lot of the interviews come out, 12 Days of the Comic Source, Spawn Daily, all that stuff. So just head over to YouTube, do a search for the Comic Source, like, comment, subscribe once you're there. It's really busy time with 12 Days of the Comic Source and the giveaways and everything. So we hope that you're having a great holiday season and you're finding time to enjoy some comics. I mean, plenty of DC books to check out this week. Plenty to choose from. So we appreciate you all taking the time. Any last thoughts, Rocky?
Yeah, I'm having a bitch of a time picking my my top indie comics and my top DC comics for the year, but it's I'm quite enjoying it. I'm looking forward to putting that together. I always enjoy part of my enjoyment of the Christmas holidays is because I have more time. I can sort of come up to my loft and relax and just go through. My boxes are organized according to the year, so I'm going to enjoy going through and just remembering those comics, those stories that I loved and those that I didn't love so much, and putting together my lists and maybe comparing them with you. And so it's always an enjoyable part of the year, sort of looking back and enjoying the best moments.
Yeah, definitely agree. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Thanks for taking the time, and we'll talk to you on the next one.
Catch you later.